Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The Browns continued a busy free agent period this week by adding to the roster. The biggest move was trading for Jets receiver Elijah Moore. The Browns also re-signed quarterback Joshua Dobbs and linebacker Anthony Walker Jr., as well as adding to the special teams. Here to talk about all of it, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of the WKYC Morning News. How's it going, Chud?
Scott, I'm well, except you told me last week I'd have the week off. I thought it was my birthday gift. You give me a week off.
I know. I feel bad about that. Happy birthday. And you can't
Thank
control
you.
the
Thank
Browns.
you.
If the Browns are going to keep me busy, Chud, they might as well keep you busy.
Yeah, they keep us all busy, as we talk about all the time. There really never is a week off, very rarely. But yeah, this is a busy one. What do you think? Kind of surprised? I mean, that's the way it works, right? Days and days of Jerry Judy talk. Judy. And there you have it. Bam, Elijah Moore.
Yeah, it is interesting. And to me, Judy's probably a better player. He's a number one pick or a first round pick out of Bama. But I don't think the Browns had what it took to get Judy, right? I don't think the Broncos are in a huge rush to trade him. I just think they were open to the idea. And if they could get, a first round pick or a high second round pick, maybe they would do it. And I don't think 42 would have done it for the Browns, maybe 42 and a player. But it always felt to me that Andrew Berry kind of had something in the back of his mind, right? He doesn't make a splash. He doesn't go after, or at least doesn't land McCole Hardman, right? Some of the other receivers that were out there, DJ Shark, I think is still out there. Guys, free agents that seem to make sense for the Browns. He just kind of let the market play out, and then all of a sudden the Jets, they signed Allen Lazard, they signed McCole Hardman, and then that makes Elijah Moore expendable. And the Browns liked him when he came out in the draft in 2021. He was the number 34 pick of the Jets, and they were interested in Moore last year at the trade deadline, after Moore had requested a trade from the Jets because he wasn't getting the ball enough. So yeah, I think that was just in the back of the Browns' minds.
I got to be honest, Scott. I think at the end of the day, I mean, I don't think there's a guarantee that Judy will end up being better than Elijah Moore when it's all said and done. I think it's a close one, but considering you didn't have to give up as much as perhaps you had to get Judy, and the potential for Elijah Moore, just watching the guy play and knowing what he's capable of, I think this is a great deal. Now, the downside is, there's the what's the word you're looking for? The mental aspect to it. You have to deal with some of that, right? With some of the history when it comes to just how he's acted.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about the concerns with him, or we could get into the fact that they didn't have to give up much to get him? And I think we need to talk about both of them.
Yeah, both of them. Yeah, it's a two for the price of one question.
Yeah, well, let's for what they had to give up, right? They give up the number 42 pick, but they get back more in number 74. So
right.
In essence, right, you give up, you get more to move back 32 spots, and that makes a lot of sense, right? The guy you're going to draft, if you were to stay at 42 and drafted, is that receiver necessarily going to be better than Elijah Moore right now? Probably not. And as important as draft picks are, and I get it, right? They are important. They help you kind of recycle your roster and rebuild it, and you add depth. But there's a lot of uncertainty. And if you get a guy that's quote unquote proven and quote unquote, you kind of guaranteed what to expect, there's a lot of value in that. And the other part of that is you're not paying Elijah Moore anything. It's like less than $2 million the next 2 years because he's still on that rookie contract. So when you look at to compare it with Judy, you'd have had to give up, in my mind, a lot more to get Judy, and you're going to have to pay him a lot more. First of all, he was a first-round pick, so the contract was more expensive, but also it felt like there need to be a renegotiation coming. And I don't get that sense with Moore, right? Moore's only 2 years in. He's got 2 years left. I think for at least this year, he just plays on the contract. So from those aspects, when the Browns are as tight as they are with the salary cap, it makes a lot of sense to me, and it winds up being cheaper than cheaper than a free agent you would have signed anyway, right? McCole Hardman, I think, is $6.5 million. He was considered one of the top speed guys on the market, and instead you get more for moving down 30 spots in less than $2 million.
So would you, going back to talk more about the comparing with Judy and Elijah, I mean, at the end of the day, which one, let's put aside draft picks and where you got them and all this, which guy would you rather have of the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think Judy, and maybe that's because I watched him more in college, Chuck, right? Like, he played at Bama, you see him more. He came in the league in 2020, 15th overall. Moore was 2021, 34th overall. Judy's stats are better. He's almost 1,000 yards last year. They're both fast. So if it was just player, I would go Judy. He's a little bigger too, right? I mean, Judy's 6'1", Moore's 5'10", right? So I think Judy's a better player, but I just don't think the Browns are going to get him. All that talk about him seemed a little unrealistic to me.
Yeah, sure. I really think there's a great chance Elijah Moore could have the better NFL career, but I'm not going to guarantee it or anything. Sure. But I'm sure they ran it by Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, at the end of the day, he said, "Oh yeah, you can trade him."
Yeah, I mean, right? I mean, you bring in Lazard, who's his guy, right? Like, that Rodgers. I mean, as much as he protested that, he's got his hands all over this, all over the Jets.
Yeah.
So how much does it concern you, Chud, that the Browns trade for a guy that last year the Jets had won 3 in a row, and he's upset that he's not getting the ball enough, so he demands or he asks for a trade. It doesn't happen. Asks for a trade, yells at the offensive coordinator. The Jets don't let him fly to a game in Denver. And then after that, like, it went away a little bit. I think he was still frustrated. He finished out the year, played the rest of the games, but obviously was not content, and it was a lot about production and targets. How much does that worry you that the Browns bring that guy in?
Yeah, it does worry me. We talk about that all the time. I don't like that type of thing. So you got me there. But I think in this case, being that you're not bringing him in as your number 1 receiver and not even your number 2 right now, right? So I think at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, then you're losing out on 30 picks in the draft. I don't think I guess what I'm saying is, if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world for what you gave up for him. That said, and I mean, it's hard for me to believe he's going to ruin any chemistry when you already have the Deshaun Watson situation there. I mean, let's be honest, right? And they've brought in a lot of good locker room guys. Maybe he just needs to be around the right people. Like, maybe him and Watson will have a bonding, and just, I guess what I'm saying is, sometimes you just need to see these guys get a new situation. And it's not like he's done anything that terrible, but it does concern me. It speaks to his attitude. So yeah, it's something that's a concern, no doubt about it. I mean, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly worth monitoring. It certainly was the focus of my stories yesterday and today to some degree. And we talked to him today. We're taping this Thursday night. We talked to Moore earlier today, and it was interesting. He talked about learning from mistakes and learning from experiences. Yet when he got asked directly about last year with the Jets, he said he had no regrets and he wouldn't take anything back. So I felt that was a little bit contradictory. He did say, because he got asked, well, what if you don't get the ball enough next year, this year, coming here with the Browns? And he said, well, I'm going to call up the quote just so I get it right. But it was, I'm not going to make it. I can't predict the future, but I'm going to try to learn from what happened last year. So it's just, I felt the answers were interesting, that he didn't have any regrets, because he could have said, yeah, I didn't handle it well. But he didn't say that. He said, something happens in my life. I'm going to take what I can from it. Going to move forward because people make mistakes. Trying to be a good person. That's all that matters. And I'm I'm cutting out part of the quotes here. But when he got asked about next year, what if you don't get the ball enough? I can't predict the future, but I'm going to put my best foot forward. I feel like I'm here for a reason. So whatever happens, I'm going to be ready for it. We're all human. I'm just going to try to do what I feel I could have done better last year in whatever position I'm going to be in now. So, I think he's kind of trying to find that balance between, yeah, I messed up, but there's a reason I acted the way I did. I don't feel too bad about it because I wanted the ball and I want to help my team win. All those things that receivers talk about when they want the ball. But I think the new setting will help. I think stability at quarterback will help, right? The Jets went through, and none of this is a reason for a guy to be selfish, if that's how you want to view it, right? And if it comes after a 3-game winning streak, the look isn't good. But right. But this quarterback situation is better. They had Zach Wilson and a bunch of other guys. He loves Amari Cooper. He grew up in South Florida. He's been watching Cooper forever, or since he was a teenager. Considers himself a really good route runner, like obviously Amari Cooper does. And Cooper is a guy that doesn't say a lot, is a team guy, unselfish, does not get caught up in stats. So I think that could help, right? This presence, this mentorship, this role model, and then throwing a guy like Nick Chubb even in the same offensive room, I think that could help Moore's transition, but it certainly bears watching, right? Now, the other thing that would help is if the Browns score a ton of points and throw the ball all around the field, right? Then everybody's happy. And, especially you would say if you're winning, but winning doesn't cure it all, as we saw last year with the Jets. But if you're winning, moving the ball, scoring a bunch of points, throwing for a bunch of yards, it would keep any kind of discontent bottled up, I would think.
I guess my last point I'll make on it is that you're right. We even talked last week about how, the Browns have brought in guys and we've seen guys fail when we've seen the red flags, right? But I think in this situation, they almost kind of have to go for it with the wide receiver position because, as you talked about, missing out on other guys, not being in a position in the draft to really get a key guy. I feel like you almost have to take a shot here.
Yeah, and how many times have we talked? I agree with you, Chud, and I think it speaks to the sense of urgency, right? Which we've talked about a billion times, from the fact that Stefanski and Andrew Berry are entering the 4th year together, from the fact that they missed the playoffs 2 years in a row, the fact that they're spending $46 million on the quarterback, right? All of those things lead to an increased sense of urgency and, in my opinion, moves that say, okay, they need to win right now, right, if you're the Browns. And I think this is another step in that direction. And from a schematic standpoint and a roster standpoint, he addresses that speed need that was obvious last year and we've talked about all offseason, right? If the Browns are going to add a receiver, which they needed to do, he needed to be a guy with explosiveness. And whether that's stretching the field on deep routes, whether that's taking a bubble screen and breaking tackles and going 40 yards, whether it's a slant and run after catch, whatever it is, you need that explosion. And that's what Moore brings. He ran a 4.3 something in his pro day, whether it's 4.32, 4.35, you see different timings. But obviously a big time 40. He says speed is certainly part of his game. He thinks he's a well-rounded guy, but that's certainly part of his game. And that was the Browns made a concerted effort to find that element in the receiver, and he provides that.
So I was talking at work this morning with someone. I'll just tell you who it was. Austin Love.
Name dropping.
No name dropping, but don't take this, don't think this means a lot because the guy carries around a cardboard cutout of me. If you've seen on social media and on Go in the morning. So think about that before I say. But we were talking and we were just kind of like, we like Amari Cooper and now you add some depth, but it's just still, it feels like you're missing. Do you feel like Amari Cooper's that number one guy though? Like a Jamar Chase or some of these other receivers in the league? I mean, do you feel like, would you rather have Cooper be your number 2 or are you okay with him being number 1?
That's a good question. I'm fine with him as the number 1. He's not a Jamar Chase. He's not a top 5 guy. And I don't know if he ever has been. But I think he's a legitimate number 1. And I'll say this, Chud. I think part of maybe how we view him is shaped by, at the end of the year, he was dealing with that core muscle injury. And that affected him. It affected his numbers. It affected his burst, where there were plays starting in that Cincinnati game, really, on the road, where he couldn't run like he needs to run and like he normally does. And then it would be fine and he could run. So I think that may color our perspective a little bit. But, he's a 1,200-yard guy. He came close last year. I think he's a 1. I don't think he's an elite 1, but I'm okay with him 1. I think Peoples-Jones is like a 2/3, and Moore kind of feels like a 2/3. So I think you can make it work with those guys. Having said that, I would not be stunned if the Browns still added maybe Marquise Goodwin, who they had in early in the week on a visit. He's another fast guy. He's a veteran. The door is not shut on him, and I think they could draft a guy. I think they're going to be looking to build on that receiver spot because after those top 3 guys, there's some question marks, right? David Bell, Anthony Schwartz, Michael Woods. I don't know if any of those guys I know that none of those guys is a proven commodity right now.
Josh Dobbs is going to be your backup quarterback.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I remember having these talks with you last year, Chud. He played so well in the preseason, right? People wanted a Dobbs packet. People were wondering if he should get reps over Jacoby Brissett, and then Brissett played really well, right? And that talk quieted. And Dobbs didn't take 1 snap. Was a backup for 11 games, didn't take a snap, got cut when Watson came back. So there's stuff to like about Dobbs. He's crazy smart, which you want in your backup quarterback. Similar style to Watson, right? Both run. Watson throws it much better than Dobbs, but Dobbs can throw it okay. But they both have that elusiveness. You can run, have designed runs with your quarterback. And maybe the best part is he's cheap. He's like $2 million, right? And when you're trying to save salary cap space and make it work, we've talked about this. You're going to have to save at certain positions. And we can have an argument, and maybe we have, about how much you spend on that quarterback, right, on the backup quarterback, because what if Watson gets hurt and misses 6 games? But it always felt like that was probably a spot where the Browns figured they could save. And I think with Dobbs' familiarity with the offense, familiarity with Watson, and his intelligence, they feel like he works as that number 2. Now, if Watson misses 6 games and Dobbs goes 1-5, then it's not the right move. But I understand why they would do it.
Yeah, I mean, with everything they've put into Watson, I don't care if who they bring in at backup quarterback. If he is out for any extended period of time with what they've invested in,
right?
What he means right now to the franchise, that's pretty big, obviously. Anthony Walker Jr., are you surprised by that?
I'm not. But when he went and visited Washington, then I started to wonder because
that's what I was saying.
Right?
I felt like when we talked last week, it felt like he was going to be gone.
Yeah, it was interesting because not that they let him out of the building. He wasn't really in the building, but he goes and visits somewhere else. You start to wonder. He's really tight with Brissett. So I thought, and Brissett signed with Washington, so I thought, okay, maybe they stay together. They were together with the Colts. They were together with the Browns. So I think it's interesting that he came back. It makes sense to me. They missed him when he got hurt last year in week 3. They missed his communication, his leadership. He's a good guy to have around. He's smart. I thought he played well before he got hurt. So I like it. I still think they probably need to add one more body there. And maybe that waits until the draft. Maybe in the 3rd round they just draft a linebacker because there's a lot of question marks. Walker coming off injury. Taki coming off injury. Phillips coming off injury and hasn't played well. JOK, I didn't think had the breakout people were looking for in year 2 and then had an injury at the end of the season. So there's a lot of bodies there, but I think you might need to add one more.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up with the other moves they made and a couple of guys, at least one guy that is heading elsewhere. Dearness Johnson, right? He's leaving?
He's going to Jacksonville.
Dearness goes to Jacksonville.
He just didn't get any playing time last year. He had like 4 carries, right? And he had the year before he had the breakout because he got all the carries. Hunt was hurt. Chubb was hurt. He had 100 carries, 500 some yards, scored touchdowns at a big primetime game. He just didn't have the opportunity last year. And I think this is a good place for him to go, chance to get more opportunities. Now Jerome Ford gets a chance to be your number 2. The Browns will probably draft somebody to compete with Ford. Now Dearness could have been your number 2, and I think the Browns have been fine with that. But he would have been a little more expensive, and I think he wanted to go somewhere where he felt like he had a fresh start and an opportunity. The only other minor moves the Browns signed: a veteran linebacker, Matthew Adams, more of a special teamer. Same with Mike Ford. He's a special teamer / cornerback. So they have addressed special teams. They brought back Jordan Kanasic, the linebacker, who's more of a special teamer. So Bubba Ventrone, the new special teams coordinator, gets a few guys. So it feels like now they could still make another move, another receiver, maybe DN, D-line, linebacker. Like, I don't know if they're done, but I would expect most of the big moves to be done. And then, okay, so then it's filling in, it's keeping an eye on free agents that slip through the cracks. And then it's the draft. And right before I let you go, now there's no number 42 pick in the draft. The Browns don't pick until 74. They still have 8 picks, right? But no first-round pick, no second-round pick for the second straight year. It's just going to take some getting used to.
Yeah, that's not ideal, certainly. What about they brought in Atkins, right?
Oh yeah. Jordan Atkins, a tight end. I think he'll be the number 2 tight end behind Njoku. Harrison Bryant, as he stays the number 3, could they trade him for a draft pick? I just think the Browns felt they needed to upgrade at that number 2 spot. So you've seen them start to make moves on offense, right? You mentioned Dobbs and Moore and Atkins, and they re-signed Posick. So there have been moves on offense. Obviously, the focus has been defense, but as free agency's gone along, you've seen a few more moves on offense, and they're important ones, obviously, with Moore and Dobbs at the top of that list.
Yeah, you guys talked with Agbo, right? Did you ask him how to pronounce his name?
I did. He was kind of.
Did you?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. He said, because he was just getting called Obo, and I said, "Hey, are you all right with us calling you Obo?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, that's my name." I was like, "Okay," just because there's so many letters, right? But he's good with Obo. Good with Obo.
Okay, I think I said Agbo. Whatever. All
Obo.
Right. That's
I think
hilarious.
there's a G in there, but it's pronounced Obo.
G. Okay. Yeah. Well, as we know from the days of cartoons, G is for Grover. I don't know why. I gotta go to bed.
Kids,
I gotta go get a nap, Scott.
That's funny.
G's for Grover.
Oh my
All
gosh,
right. Anything else before we head out?
No, I think I hit on it. I did want to make sure we just mentioned the fact that, no pick until the 3rd round. Obviously, that could change with the trade up, but that's why you need to be aggressive in free agency, right? Now, you can find depth, but when you're drafting that late, I don't know if you can count on somebody to come in and have a big impact, which is why they had to make the moves that they did in free agency. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about the draft. I just think that was an important piece of the Moore trade. So, Chud, thank you for working on your week.
No question.
Thank you for working on your week off.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thank you.